What's going on, everybody? How y'all doing out there tonight? This is Shabazz with the proper perspective. We had technical difficulties, but we're trying to get them all cleared away and situated for you tonight. Hope y'all are getting ready to tune in. I am in a bit of a flux, trying to get everything situated. The technical difficulties had me losing my mind. But what's going on? How y'all doing? We getting some conversation going tonight. We're gonna go a little spiritual a bit tonight, and maybe that's why I had the technical difficulties because I was trying to do something a little bit different. Um, and everything went haywire. But I got at least half of everything back. So we're gonna get it started tonight. I'm gonna give it a couple minutes to make sure the notifications went through because I don't know if those were working either. And I really don't know if I don't even know the if the sound is right. If you happen to be joining in and you in the chat room, let me know that you can hear me so I know everything is working on that side of the aisle. Shout out to Decoding History Podcast for tuning in. Y'all check out Decoding History Podcast as well because that is a definite banger of a channel that you need to be checking out. A lot of powerful, useful, needful information that they didn't teach us in school. And Decoding History Podcast is bringing it down for you. So give a shout out. I get that shout out. I get that shout out. And I throw that on the screen a little bit. Now I'm going to try to get it started tonight. I'm definitely doing something different tonight. I'm definitely doing something entirely different. Usually I stick to politics and I stick to culture, but some things was jumping off a little bit more so like in the private life, but I ain't, so it just gave me a different kind of focus. So I'm gonna try a little something different. Tonight, what we talking about, I know the title was The Law of Attraction is Not Real. And yeah, I did that a little bit for the purpose of clickbait. You gotta grab people's attention. Law of attraction, is it a lie? Real talk on energy, power, and spiritual freedom. That's what we're talking about tonight. That's the focus, that's the aim, that's the goal. I'm gonna try to give you a little bit of proper perspective and maybe drop some jewels and teach a little thing or two. So really what we're doing is I'm gonna be leaning into this idea of synchronicity. Synchronicity. Y'all might have heard that word. It could be it gets thrown around a lot. And some people think it's an interesting thing. And we're gonna see what's going on with it. So, how are we gonna start? How am I gonna start this out? Well, like I said, today we're gonna dive into something real. That's what we're gonna try to do. I'm not talking about religion though. I usually try to stay away from religion. I may step on some religious toes because I do tend to go off on tangents, but I'm not really here to talk about religion. I'm not here to debate religion. Whatever your religion is, that's on you. But we will see. Like I said, I normally talk about politics. I hope I stay focused, but I like to digress, so I may bring up some political things. Did y'all see? Y'all see any of the information going on about Burkina Faso and the April 30th? That's today, the April 30th protest. If you were at one of the protests, give me a shout out. Let me know where you were. Were you in the US? Were you in Burkina Faso? Were you in Ghana? These protests supposed to be going on all around the world. But like I said, I digress. I want to talk about something deeper today. I want to talk about something a little bit closer to on the spiritual side of things. What happens? So here's my question. And if you relate to this, let me know. Say something in the chat. Or let me ask you this way. If you are in the chat room, anybody ever gone to therapy? Anybody use a therapist or a counselor? I know I'm touching on some taboo things when I bring that word up. But my question is, what happens when the things you talk about in therapy start showing up in real life? And yeah, I know I'm telling on myself. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I have a therapist. I have a counselor. I go to counseling meetings. I know we black. We don't do that. I know. I've heard it all before. I've heard all that jazz all for my whole old ass life. And as far as that's concerned, I get it. But as far as that's concerned, just consider me one of those that's going to at least break one generational curse during my time on this planet. And that's the one I'm going to break. I ain't afraid to admit it. And anyone trying to throw shade or shame, well, I got some Alabama slammer chairs just waiting to flex on you. I go to counseling and I ain't ashamed of it. But maybe that's a I digress moment as well. So let me get a little bit more, maybe personal is the right word. Maybe it's not. Something that I started noticing in little ways, in silly ways, I might say. So I'm in therapy. And, what I notice is the things that I talk about in therapy, whether I'm talking about them in a positive or a negative light, what have you, but I'm talking about things. And it seems as though what I'm talking about starts to manifest. Now, what do I mean by that? Because okay, it's already happening if you're talking about it, yes. But what I'm talking about is almost as though as I'm having a conversation about something that I want to have happen or something that I'm worried about, something that's giving me angst. Then in real life, the problem that is brewing disappears. So I started noticing this in little ways. Now, if, like I said, if you're someone that's in therapy, if you're someone that goes to a counselor, let me know something. Um, Let me give a shout out because my fam is in the house tonight. Dr. Dennis Osar Winkler. He says, yes, it is a lie. Now I really appreciate that. I really do appreciate. I appreciate that for one because my fam is in the chat room. But I also appreciate the fact and the sentiment that he says the law of attraction is a lie. Because I'm gonna tell you, I absolutely hate the idea and the school of thought about the law of attraction. Now it was brought to me by some friends. It was brought to me by some people that I respect, I admire, I appreciate their perspective on it, and I get why they are drawn to it. But it doesn't work for me, so I had to let that go. Now, Dr. Dennis Osar Winkler says, somewhat dependent on it's a lie somewhat depending on what you mean by it. Okay, now that's nuance there. And he says, blessings, peace, fam, peace, cuz, how you doing? Now I'm gonna digress off and on tonight because I'm like, and I'm gonna be going back and forth different screens because I'm reading two different screens because I ain't got my software set up the way it's supposed to. I'm supposed to have this thing set up where everything that comes into the chat pops up on my screen, and none of it is on my screen. So I got to go back and check some other things. But that's neither here nor there. What's going on, everybody? Peace to everybody. Peace to all the positive people in the universe. You're listening to The Proper Perspective. Like, share, and subscribe. Like, share, and subscribe. That's the name of the game. So anyhow, what I was saying, let me go back to, I started noticing in these weird little ways. So I'll give you an example. I'm going to give you several examples tonight. And maybe as I build upon this scene, you will see what I'm talking about. So on one given day, I'm talking about this thing, and I know it's going to sound silly, but I'm the kind of person, I can't never really see how people look alike. Now, this ain't no big deal, and I'm not saying I'm in therapy over this. That's not what I'm saying. This is just an example of something that occurs that happen, that there are other associated links, but none of that. I ain't supposed to be revealing all that anyhow. So anyhow, I have this conversation and I'm like, well, now that you mention it, I can't literally see how people look alike. Now I'm talking all kind of people. When I was in high school, when I was in college, there's people, there's family in your own personal family, but you go to school with people and there's family, they got their families. Now, I've always been the kind of person where unless y'all are twins, y'all don't look alike. I don't see it. I don't see mother-daughter resemblances. I don't see father-son resemblances. I don't see brother-to-brother resemblances. It never, everybody always look entirely, completely different to me. So this, okay, like I said, this is weird, I know. Now, here's my caveat. Here's my one, different aha moment. If I start comparing baby pictures to different people. So for instance, let me deal with like my own family. So if I start comparing baby pictures of my siblings, so I'll grab a picture of my brother when he was 15 years old and take a picture of his son, my nephew, when he was 15. I put those two pictures together and I'm like, y'all look like the spitting image of each other. But as I'm looking at my brother right now and I'm looking at my nephew right now, I don't see it. Y'all look like two totally different individuals. This is what I mean when I say I don't see resemblances. I can't see it. I've had people come up to me. I'm in the stores. I'm in a store with my brother. We walk around chilling, doing whatever. You know what I'm saying? People come up to us and be like, "Are y'all twins?" And I'm like, "How in the hell? We don't look alike to me." But anyhow, so this is what I'm building a case here. So, like I said, right now, side by side, I don't see the resemblances. But you line up past and present, and boom, voila, lights go off. Bells start ringing, and I see it. No big deal, right? Now, here's where we're really gonna get kind of like interesting. Because this is what I'm not talking about this just to be talking about, resemblances. This is what I say all of that to say. Because I said we're going to lean into something spiritual. So I'm getting there. Walk with me. This is no big deal until out of nowhere, we talk about just this, just little pictures and recognizing similarities in people's looks and whatnot. And out of nowhere, my sister sends me some AI enhanced photos comparing herself and her daughter. Now, one, I'm like, wait a minute. I'm just talking about pictures and resemblances of my own accord for a reason, and they ain't got nothing to do with nothing. If somebody sends me pictures, that's directly related to the same thing. And I'm like, okay, coincidence, so what? Keep it moving. Now, the very specific pictures themselves are doing the very specific thing that I'm talking about during therapy, showing resemblances. So I'm like, okay, now, in the back of my mind, some things start to gnaw at me. There was no prompting. There was no conversation. I hadn't had a discussion with my sister about who looks like whom or who doesn't look like. There was no conversation about uh, let's use AI to play with each other's pictures. No, nothing. None of that happened. Just I'm in therapy talking about I don't see similarities. And voila, somebody sends me pictures of similarities. So, like I said, that's a silly example, I know. But now, at the same time, now, this is just the beginning. I'm going somewhere with this. So, listen up. Now, I'm not saying that this happened at the same time. I'm just saying I'm building this case about these coincidences because I also talked about frustrations. Specifically, I talked about frustrations about living in America. Y'all remember that James Brown song? Now I'm one of those, wannabe Pan-Africanists. That's the tip that I kind of ride on. I'm one of those, we need to get up out of here type dudes. So I've been having conversations with myself, myself, and I. I've been having conversations with family, friends, everybody that know me, they know I'm trying to get up out of here. I've been eyeing Senegal, I've been eyeing Ghana, but I've been worried. I've been worried about whether or not it's the right thing to do. Of course, that's natural. I've been worried about whether or not, the universe is going to open that pathway or not. And I got some people that's like involved, and I've been worried and stressed a little bit about whether or not people are going to drag their feet, whether or not the system is going to delay the process. So, this is something that comes up in therapy. And lo and behold, as I'm talking about it in therapy, I literally, right after, no, okay, not literally, right after the therapy session is ended. So I'm getting myself together and I'm about to go do something else or whatnot. And FedEx drops off the package, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm like, yeah, it's already late. It's already like I was supposed to get it in 3 weeks. And yeah, I know they tell you 3 to 5 and blah blah blah. They say all of that because they don't want you calling them and whatnot. But I'm really stressed out or whatnot. And I'm spending all this time and energy on getting this stuff cleared away, getting all of this baggage out the way. And voila, the visa shows up, the passport shows up. No extra. I didn't go sit down and pray. I didn't go make a bunch of phone calls. I didn't send off a trailer load of emails asking everybody in the post office, in the FedEx office, in the embassy office, where my stuff at. But I'm putting all this energy into the conversation about it in therapy, and voila, it arrives. Now again, this just might be coincidence, and you might be like, bro, you smoking something. Okay, for now, I'm gonna take that. For now, I'm gonna take that. But I'm just I'm curious. So when I get curious, I like to I like to do research. That's part of my thing, my shtick about being the having the proper perspective is to get curious and to do research. So that's what I like to do. So we got these two examples so far. I'm trying to, set the scene. And I'm like, okay, now at first I was able to say just coincidence, brush it off. Then I got a second thing coming along, and I'm like, okay, the spidey senses is a little bit harder to shake off, but I can still go about my business. And then it got weirder, ladies and gentlemen. I'm in therapy. I'm having my counseling session. And I'm talking about old ties. I'm talking about soul ties. Y'all ever heard about those? So I'm having these little conversations. And lo and behold, before I know it, before I realize it, not that I was looking for it, but as I'm talking about these old ties and connections, folks from my past suddenly start popping up. I go to my Facebook page, and people I ain't spoke to in 5 years is now on my timeline. People I ain't had a conversation with in 2 years is now sending me little DM messages. People just popping up all over the place. So my DMs got old folks returning. My Instagram got old folks hitting the like button. Some of them even texting me on my phone. Like, okay. Now I was willing to brush it off and say, I'm tripping the first time it happened. I was reluctant, but still willing to brush it off and say, I'm tripping the second time it happened. But three times is a pattern, not a coincidence. Unless I'm just crazy. So y'all tell me if you're still listening. If you're listening, say something in the chat. What's really going on? What's happening? That's what I need to know. That's what I'm trying to get at. Is there something bigger going on? Is this the law of attraction? Is this the law of attraction? So let me take a pause and see what Dr. Dennis Assad Winkler says. He said, if you were going by the secrets rules, then you weren't supposed to get it, because the theory is if you speak about not having a thing, you won't receive it. Now, Dr. Dennis Assad Winkler is about to go deep. Let me slow myself down. Let me slow myself down and let me pull all this together. The secret rule, the rule of secrets, if you're not supposed to get it, the rule of secrets, you weren't supposed to get it, because the theory is if you speak about not having it, then you won't receive it. And Dr. Dennis Assad says, I would say synchronicity is real for sure. Know what it means. You got to know what it means. It's something else. Don't worry about the grammar, bro. Don't worry about the grammar. We ain't submitting no papers tonight. We good. So, like I said, things get weirder. I'm in flow state. Okay, that's a good word. That's a good phrase. I'm in flow state. I like that. So, like I said, all this weirdness going on, this flow state, right? So now we getting somewhere. I might not be crazy, ladies and gentlemen. Something bigger might actually be going on. So I'm gonna hit you with this one thing first. I did some research, like I said earlier. I decided to dig deep. And here's something I found, and this is interesting, at least to me. There's something in your brain called reticular activating system. This is sort of like your mind's filter. Reticular activating system. When you focus attention onto a thing, your subconscious starts to scanning the world for anything connected. I'll give you an example. And this ain't a personal one. This one, I'm pretty sure a lot of you will relate to. You ever buy a new car? Now, I don't mean brand new. I mean, for you, if you got the money like that and you bought it brand new, that's great. I just mean you ever bought a car. It's new to you. I don't care how old it is. But suddenly, even if you're interested in purchasing the car, then all of a sudden, everywhere you go, you see that car. Now, according to the research, this is reticular activating system in action. When you talk about things, especially in therapy, not because it's therapy, but because during therapy, during a counseling session, it's not just a talk. You are usually intense in your energy. So it doesn't have to be therapy per se. It could just be you and your people sitting around having a lemon squeeze of a grape fest. It's the intensity, it's the energy. But I'm going to stick to therapy because that's where I do that. So when you talk about things and you have this intensity of it involved, you're priming your awareness. You begin to notice what you haven't noticed before. For all you know, it could have been 1,000 red Hondas that drove past you last week when you weren't thinking about buying a car. But now that you want that red Honda, now you see 1,000 red Hondas. And Dr. Dennis Assad Winkler says, the movie and the book is called The Secret. Yeah, I read that. Well, I did read The Secret. I think I read this. Let me slow it down because I may be jumping out there on a limb. I know I've heard of both the book and The Secret. I know I've been recommended to read the book. I've been recommended to watch The Secret. And I know that I went at least a little bit down that path. But like I said, I know that for me, the law of attraction, the law of resonance, the law of this, that, and another, and a third, I never really I never really vibe with them. So I had to back away from it a little bit. But yeah, if you're interested in this topic, those are definitely works to check out. I'm not gonna say like I don't pledge allegiance to it, but it's out there and it will definitely, like I said, because I had the friends and associates and whatnot, and for them, it did something for them. I'm just staking. I'm gonna die on this hill of I don't know. But like I said, this reticular activating system, once you start getting focused and placing a lot of energy on something, you notice what you haven't noticed before. And your brain begins to connect dots where you perhaps couldn't or wouldn't prior to that. Now, this ain't magic. So let me get this straight. This is, you know, because I know a lot of times in these Bible thumping circles, we start to throwing out some words. Don't do that. I'm not talking about magic. I'm talking about your inner attention, your inner being to some extent, your inner energy. Because it's from that you begin to reshape your outer perception. So this inner energy is what I'm talking about. Now, since I'm talking about this inner energy, and since I'm always interested in connecting the dots, excuse the recent use of the pun, I got to bring up or connecting the dots to our African ancestors, our African history, our African culture. It behooves me to say, it behooves me to remind those of us who know, and it behooves me to introduce a jewel to those of you who may not know. There's an Akan from Ghana, there's an Akan proverb that says, even the fiercest wind cannot uproot the tree that knows how deep its roots go. Even the fiercest wind cannot uproot the tree that knows how deep its roots go. So you got to know how deep your roots go. The mind rooted in clarity will recognize its own reflection even in chaos, whatever all that means to you. It has something to do with you knowing who you are and what you are and what you have the capacity to do. I hope you get what I'm saying. Are you picking up what I'm putting down, ladies and gentlemen? Because that's my first lesson of the night. That's my first summation of the point when I'm getting at this spiritual power that we have. Let me see something. Hold on. Let me slow down. Dr. Dennis Assar Winkler, an attribution bias. Okay, now that's interesting. An attribution bias. Now, according to their laws, you weren't supposed to be experiencing this. I don't believe in them. That's good. Like I said, I struggle with it. I like the idea of it when you first hear about it. It sounds real good. But as you go dealing with it, there's something awry in that school of thought. And I'm like, what I end up doing is if I can't tie it to an African principle, to an African teaching, then I gotta remain suspect. To me, there's always something just not quite right with it. Now, that's just my own filter. I'm not saying everybody got to do that. But I like that idea about attribution bias. Even if I may not necessarily know entirely what it's about, I got a good gut feeling. But let me move on just a little bit. Let me pause. Station break, ladies and gentlemen. If you're feeling what I'm saying, if you're picking up what I'm putting down, if you're still tuned in, like, share, and subscribe. You are listening to At the Proper Perspective here on YouTube. So that's youtube.com/at the proper perspective. Like, share, and subscribe. Hit the bell for notifications so you can catch all my other shows. But now put that to the side. My second analysis about this whole what crazy coincidences actually mean, I want to bring it a little bit closer to where I'm really trying to get to. Emotional energy. Now, I touched on it just a little bit. Emotional energy and how they create subtle shifts. Because it's not just about noticing. I mean, noticing is good. Noticing means you are aware, it means you are being self reflective. You talk about something, especially when you talk about it with emotion, with charged up emotion, strong, powerful emotion. But it's that strong, charged up, powerful emotion that energizes something, whatever that something is. It creates subtle behavioral shifts. Now, I say subtle because you may not notice it. Even if you notice something is going on, you still may not notice the actual full scale weight of what's going on. Your vibe changes, your presence shifts, your intentions seep into your small behaviors. And guess what? Life responds, the universe responds. Dare I say, if you're more comfortable with the word God, then dare I say God responds. But we don't do that around here. So I'm going to stay away from that one. I ain't trying to step on them toes. I will say this, in African wisdom traditions, it is understood. In African wisdom traditions, it is understood that energy precedes matter. It is understood that spirit precedes action. So stay with me. Think about that. Now, I'm gonna drop a couple of words on you. Let me not say that. Let me not say it this way, not say it that way. But if you are familiar with our African heritage, you might be familiar with the Yoruba and their spirituality, most often called Ifa. There's a term in this body of knowledge called Ashe. Now, if you really hip to things, then you'd have heard some people saying Ashe, Ashe, or what is it? Ashe is the divine force that turns intention into reality. Energy precedes matter, spirit precedes action. Y'all see where I'm going with this? Not a coincidence. There's some spiritual things going on when you in therapy and you talking with deep, strong, powerful, energy charged up emotions. Now, the Akan from Ghana, they speak of this same power. They call it sun sun, the spiritual energy that shapes your aura and draws your destiny. But we ain't gonna just stop with the Yoruba or the Akan. We're gonna take it back. We're gonna take a few more steps across the West African promenade. Y'all know the Dogon, they teach that Nomo, the generative power of words, vibrates through all things. Now, this one is particularly interesting for me because I'm into hip hop, because I'm into old school, golden era, classic conscious hip hop. X Clan, Brother J, who said verbs of power. If you're feeling that, if you remember that song, this is what I'm talking about. This is what the Dogon were teaching. Nomo, the generative power of words, verbs of power, vibrates through all things. Speak, and it shall be. This is not mysticism. I'm not getting spooky on you. In all actuality, in all reality, this is physics, ladies and gentlemen. The white man's word, the white man's science. It's physics. All it really is a new technical vocabulalistic approach to African spirituality and African teachings. As a matter of fact, this goes all the way back to Kemet. Yep, back in ancient Egypt. Y'all see my background, so y'all know what I'm talking about. Well, y'all know from whence this perspective that I'm coming from. But even back in Kemet, so the terms that we use today from the Yoruba pantheon or from the Yoruba lexicon, Ashe, from the Dogon's Nomo, would most closely align with Hika or Hika, magic. I know y'all hate that word, but I'm gonna use it anyhow. Energy is what I'm talking about. Your life force. They called it Ka. And the Akan, they called it Sun Sun. All of this overlaps with your soul, your personality, your Ba in ancient Egypt, your power, Sekem in ancient Egypt. So now, how do we bring all this together? What in the world am I talking about? I'm just throwing words at you. This ain't no vocabulary test. Okay, let me slow it down for you. Your thoughts, your words, your unresolved emotions, they're not just ideas. They're not just thoughts that's running rampant in your brain, although they may be running rampant in your brain. Trust me, I know they running 100 miles a minute, like NWA said. They're frequencies, though. Your thoughts, your words, your unresolved emotions, your energy is a frequency. They ripple through everything, relationships, opportunities that come to you, even the way strangers respond to you. When you speak something in therapy, now remember, I'm code wording therapy for whatever your charged up emotional session might be. You could be out with your homeboys kicking it and having a lemon squeeze. You could be out with your homegirls and y'all talking about your day at the brunch or whatever it is that y'all women do. But it's the energy session that I'm talking about. For me, it's therapy. You may be one that likes to meditate. So you're focusing all that energy during your meditation. You may be one that goes to yoga. You're focusing all of your energy during that yoga session. You're not just venting, you're aligning or realigning your ori. What is ori? That's the another Yoruba term for you, the inner head. You're aligning your inner head with your higher destiny. Now, I love vocabulary over here, so I'm going to keep throwing some vocabulary out to you. Your ori is being aligned with your iponri, your higher destiny. You're not just talking about problems. Therapy ain't about just talk. It ain't about just talking about your problems. Yes, there is some venting that gets off, that takes place. But even in the venting, is what I'm trying to say, you are rewiring your spiritual DNA, whether you know it or not. That's what. So this is what I'm getting at. I feel you, Dr. Dennis Assault Winkler, saying according to their laws, you weren't supposed to be experiencing this. Oh, yeah, I already read this anyhow. Okay, let me slow down. I'm jumping. But let me see. So, what am I getting at? All this venting, all this griping, all this conversation, this discussing of your problems, this is realigning yourself. And when that happens, life doesn't just respond, life mirrors. I used to say this thing to some of my friends when we had these conversations. I used to say, because there's this phrase, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not sure where it came from. I should know. I should know, but anyhow, there's this phrase that says, I think it says, God is no respecter of personalities. So I used to say, God is a mirror. The universe is a mirror. Life is a mirror. It doesn't just respond, it mirrors. It's not a coincidence, therefore. When you are talking about old friends and then old friends text you, when you are talking about how to solve problems and then problems get solved, it's not magic, but it is magic. It's ashe in motion. It's sum sum doing its work. It's your ori aligning itself with your iponri. You think you're just having a conversation, but in truth, and I know I'm gonna piss some people off, in truth, you're casting a spell. Yes, you are casting a spell. In a very spiritual way, you are casting a spell. In a hika way. Yeah, I'm trying to aggravate you a little bit because I want you to open your mind a little bit. But I don't mean a spell like you got to be in a black overcoat with a long black pointed hat and you got a pointed nose and there's a cat behind you and you're standing in front of a cauldron and you got a broom. I ain't talking about those fairy tales. But I am talking about the universe and how it responds to you, whether you want it to or not, because the universe is always listening. Now, don't get it twisted. I'm not saying that the universe is always talking back to you. I said it's always listening. Now, I ain't doing the trick bags around here. So I'm not saying that the universe is always talking back to you. Matter of fact, here's what I'm going to do to make this point stick a little bit more. Let me introduce you to another West African proverb. This one comes from the Fon people from Benin, a group that's near and dear to my heart because I love the spirituality that they practice. Although most of us over here in Black America are scared to death of their spirituality. But the Fon's proverb, jewel, wisdom says, not every leaf that trembles means that God is speaking. Not every leaf that trembles means the gods are speaking. It takes discernment to know when God is speaking. Because it's going to take discernment to know if one of your devils is speaking instead. Not every ripple is a message. Not every ripple is a message. But you got to know when it is and when it is not. So I hope you feel, like I said, I'm going to keep saying this. I hope you're picking up what I'm putting down. I hope you're feeling me. I'm going to move on. This is my third analysis, my third level of explication. And this is where I'm going to get to, a little bit of bashing on the halls of white academia, maybe. But again, because I know in woke circles, I know, and I don't mean woke circles like the politically woke. There's a level, there's a lane for being politically woke and politically conscious. I'm not talking about that. There's a lane for being socially woke and conscious. I ain't talking about those folks. Right now, I'm talking about spiritual woke because spiritual woke is now, depending on how you feel about it, you can say spiritual woke is level one and political is at the top. You can reverse it and say political woke is level one and spiritual is the top. I don't care how you play those, but I'm talking about spiritual woke folk. The circles, especially because that's to some extent, that's the circles that I move in. And this is another, personality that gets thrown at me a lot when I had these conversations. People like to talk about and they like to work with the shadow self. And they rely on Carl Jung. And he called it synchronicity. And even my cousin said synchronicity earlier. What is synchronicity? Meaningful coincidences that can't be explained by cause and effect. So when you have meaningful coincidences and cause and effect ain't apparent, we call this synchronicity. Now, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with calling it synchronicity. That's not the bashing that I'm going to do. The bashing that I'm talking about is this, because I'm going to keep it real. I don't have anything necessarily against Carl Jung, but don't tell me Jung invented this, because he didn't. Africans knew this a long time before Europeans coined the term. Hell, Africans knew this a long time before Europeans even came upon the planet. But that's another story for another streaming show. The Yoruba called it the dance between Ori and Ashe. Now, you might say, well, it's a pretty long phrase. Okay. If you want to give credit to the European, then give them the credit of brevity, shortening phrases. Because it's a lot, sure, it's easier to say synchronicity than to say this is the dance between Ori and Ashe. But that ain't, oh, you can have that. My point is, if we ground ourselves in African teachings, we don't need Carl Jung. But that's another story. Maybe if you really that intensely impressed by Carl Jung, have at it. I'm gonna stick to this African corner of mine. The Kemetic priests, I'm gonna go back that far. The Kemetic priests studied this exact same phenomenon. They studied it in the rhythms of Ma'at. That's right, balance and order, ladies and gentlemen. Unseen alignment. In fact, the Kemetic priests named it, that word I keep throwing out. They called it Hika, the special sauce of the sacred current that turns intention into reality. And how? Through word, ritual, and alignment. There you go. That's Ma'at, the cosmic order. So synchronicity isn't magic in one respect, because there is no puff puff, there is no presto poom. It's Hika in motion. It's Ashe made manifest. Synchronicity, Hika, Ashe, Sun Sun, is what happens when your spirit stops being at war with itself. No more jihad for all my Muslim brothers and sisters. Because y'all know jihad is about, the real jihad is about the self, the war with self. So when you end that war, your life stops resisting you. The life stops resisting you. The universe stops resisting you. And when you are, so then when you are then in alignment, your words, and I love this label, I love this term, your true name, your true self. This is the Ori in Yoruba, but in ancient Egypt, they called it Ren. Now, maybe it's just a coincidence, but I like that for the simple fact that one of my favorite MCs of all time is MC Ren from NWA. And Ren means your true name in ancient Egypt. But I digress. When your spirit stops being at war with itself, your life stops resisting you. Your words, your Ren, your Ori, and your actions vibrate in harmony with the unseen, the divine, the cosmic interweavings of the web of Ma'at. That's what I'm saying. It's not a coincidence that I end up spending all this energy in a counseling session about a situation. And before I know it, the situation is almost resolved. Now, let me pause for a second, because Dr. Dennis Assault Winkler is saying something very interesting. Okay. Okay, very interesting. I'm not trying to blow my own horn or whatever, but he says, great talk. I talk about much of this in my book that's unfolding. Okay, good. We should probably understand that many people say things in different ways consistent with their epistemology. Taking that proverb. Gotcha. Gotcha for sure. Indeed, we do. You know, I mean, I like to bash Carl Jung. I like to bash the Europeans, but I don't. I bash them playfully a little bit, a little bit. And Dr. Dennis Oswald says, I agree, but don't forget, Young studied indigenous people across the world, including Africa. And that's the reason why I sort of like I'll bring up, the reason I bash him is because I'm not really trying to put him down, so to speak. I like to pay homage to the sources. So for me, to some extent, the same way the ancient Greeks get credit for mathematics and science and religion and all this other stuff. I'm like, okay, yeah, but we know where they went to learn it. So I pay homage to the original source. So when I bash Carl Jung, I bash him so that I can bring up the point that Africans been knowing this. But again, that's me in my little corner. Now, I think I got one more. Well, I at least got one more proverb for you, ladies and gentlemen. Because as I try to interweave and pull all of this stuff together, let me say this. Because I'm trying to talk about a thing without talking about a thing. But since I'm bringing up the Yoruba so often in this conversation, they too have a West African proverb. They too have a proverb for you. The river does not boast of its power, but it carries boats and it drowns boats just alike. The river does not boast of its power, but it carries boats and drowns them one the same. What does this mean? It means that power moves silently, but impacts greatly. So that power that you're tapping into when you're having that gripe session in therapy, when you're having your mindfulness moments in yoga, that power is moving things all around you, whether you know it or not. That's why it's magic. That's why it's hika. That's why it's ashe. When you are grounded, when you are centered, they say, you can move mountains. Where do you think that phrase came from? So let me say it this way. Real talk. I'm trying to get some real talk. I used to get caught up in law of attraction, and nowadays I call it nonsense. I didn't call it nonsense back then. I got baited into prosperity preaching from both Christian and Muslim versions alike. Now, not a lot of Christian. I'm not gonna front. I ain't never been to church for real, for real. But I've always had Christians in my circle. And so prosperity preaching found its way on my doorstep. And I found it in some Muslim circles as well. They told me, like they was trying to channel Nas, the world is yours. Whose world is this? But they never told me the cost. So the truth is, and this is why I'm so against the law of attraction. I'm against anything that tells you if you focus on it strong enough, you will get it. That's not what I'm saying. I am not saying that you can go to therapy, you can talk about something, and magically it's gonna be resolved. If that was the case, I'd go to therapy and talk about my $1 million lottery ticket. That's not what I'm saying. Because the truth is, most of us are ants on wheels we didn't build. Most of us are ants on wheels we didn't build. You cannot just talk yourself into $1 million. But that's not what I'm trying to discuss. That's not what I mean to impress upon you. So don't get me twisted. Freedom is a road seldom traveled by the multitudes, as we heard in the Public Enemy song. We claw for scraps of sovereignty in a rigged system. This is just the truth of it. So don't Don't bring your prosperity preaching around me. I ain't falling for that. But that's precisely why leaning into real alignment matters, not fantasy, not wishing. I'm talking about being rooted and having guided movement towards a goal. Because that's what's going on in a therapy session. You're being rooted, you're being grounded with a guided goal. And this is the wisdom that I'm trying to impart, trying to discuss, that I'm realizing as I'm having all of these coincidences all throughout the days of my life. And so I'm reminded, or I'm informed by a brother who sent me this proverb, brother from Uganda. He said, well, you know, my brother, wisdom is like a baobab tree. No one individual can embrace it. Hmm. I'm like, okay, I feel you. I think what this means is you take your piece of wisdom when you can, where you can, but don't go try to grab the whole cosmos all at once. TLC said, what? Don't go chasing waterfalls. You know, I ain't saying stick to the rivers and the streams. I ain't saying don't expand your reach. But you take your piece of wisdom and you work it. You don't throw it away because so you can get some more. So my closing message or my closing statement. Let me just say this. If these are some things, if coincidences, even if the specifics are vastly different from the ones that I'm talking about, because we all recognize things from in different ways. But if you ever have yourself in a situation where you're thinking, am I crazy because of these coincidences? No, you're not crazy. You're not imagining things. When you align, you feel it. Now, sometimes you might need to slow yourself down. I used to say this to some people, to some friends of mine. You know, if you slow down, you just might hear God talking because you can't hear him if you're running too fast. But when you slow down and you align yourself, you begin to feel some things. And once you've done that, when you wake up, what you will see is the universe mirroring back to you what you've been trying to work on. Walk carefully, ladies and gentlemen. That's what I'm saying. Claim your portion. Move with clarity. Clarity, not craving. Now I know, because I'm guilty of it myself. Craving is hit hard, but don't move with your cravings. Move with clarity. Well, at least make every effort to do so. And trust that some mysteries are not obstacles. Mysteries are the path itself. And I'll also say this: freedom is a road seldom traveled by the multitudes. It isn't a gift. It's a result of spiritual sovereignty. It's a result of spiritual sovereignty. Let me pause for a moment and check my chat. Okay, let me see. Let me see. It's Dr. Dennis Winkler says, I challenged him the same way in the book. Okay, he challenges Carl Jung, but I don't give them anything meaning Jung and Freud. Oh yeah, and Freud is another one. I ain't gonna even go there. But for real, yeah, I don't give them anything. Like, they okay if it's the only way that a person has to come into contact with these concepts, these principles, these teachings. But once you've come into contact with them, if you are guided by an African framework, then you will impress upon yourself to dig deeper so that you can see where they're getting their wisdom from. Because no matter how powerful these people may come off, no matter how powerful people may say these guys are, I'm not saying that they're dead wrong. I'm saying, but whatever right that they have, whatever they have correct, they have it correct because they're tapping into a source. So you don't need to tap into them. You need to tap into the source that they tapped into. African spirituality might be the word that I use, might be the proper word for it. It's the proper perspective. You feel me? And so, like, again, from the Akan perspective, from the wisdom of the Akan, they say the one who listens to the elders, and this is why I'm saying tap into the original source. Young, Freud, and whomever, they tapped into the original source. You don't need to go to them. The one who listens to the elders builds their house on solid ground. So when you root your steps into the deepest parts of the pool of wisdom, of the ocean of wisdom, shout out to those of you who know anything about Olokun. When you root your steps into the deepest parts of wisdom, that's when you see the metal hit the pedal. No, I said that wrong. That's when you see the pedal hit the metal, because that's when things really start taking off. Now, that's my spiel, ladies and gentlemen. I don't have too much more to go. Like I said, I wanted to lean into this whole realm of spirituality. I wanted to discuss this path, this journey, this revelation moment about all these things. So it's like I'm encouraged to continue in uh, this journey of therapy. I'm encouraged to continue using therapy because what I'm noticing is as I have these conversations, I get positive results. So how can this be a bad thing? And I say all of that simply because there's so many of us in the Black community, particularly, that don't believe in therapy. So if you change your mindset about what therapy is, therapy does not mean you're crazy. It doesn't mean you're broken, you're twisted. Now, you might have some people that's crazy, broken, and twisted. 9 times out of 10, they ain't even going to therapy. Therapy is simply a way to focus, to get your mind right, to get your spirit right. Because as you put intentional energy towards specific goals, because that's what therapy is, you will probably see some of these same coincidences start to happen in your life. Now, I can't promise that. I can't guarantee that. So don't sue me if I'm wrong. Now, let me see. Dr. Dennis Assal says maybe the ability to label things and some other things, but they learn from indigenous people. True, indeed. That's exactly why I said, I give them credit for coining phrases. They can consume a lot of information and spit it back out to you in a way that might seem, or in a way that's more relevant to a given society. And I don't fault them for that. I don't blame them for that, and I don't ignore them for that. But always dig deeper into the well is what I say. Now, normally this is about the time I might have to do some checks. I don't necessarily know if I got the software set up like that, but bro, since you're still here, if you want to get on here live and we can further the conversation, that's cool. If you be like, all right, that's okay, I'm good, then that's cool too. Dr. This also says good stuff. I agree that we can learn from them, but let's not get stuck there or even with our own ancestors, as we are our ancestors. This is true indeed. We are up at bat. Sankofa also means that we are going to move to forward on. That's true. Forward ever. Backwards, never. Indeed. I'll have to chat with you about something offline. I think you will find revealing, perhaps about uh, your own brilliance. Okay, that's fine too. Definitely, we got to shout out, we got to build, we got to work together. So I'm definitely with that. Let me see. Nothing else is jumping off. Like I said, this was the topic, ladies and gentlemen. This is what I wanted to talk about. Please make sure that you share this podcast, share this YouTube channel, share this video with anybody. You can share it wherever you want. You can share it on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Sometimes I do my little multi-streaming thing. I didn't get around to doing it today. I had way too much stuff going on. But that's my spiel, that's my stick, that's my proper perspective. I have finished my little leaning into synchronicity, and I'm gonna get ready to get up out of here. I got to pull up my theme song. If you know it, shout out. If you don't know it, stick around and take a listen. And with that, I'm gonna get ready. Hopefully this thing works. Last time I did it, it didn't work. I hope y'all can hear this.